So, first of all, thank you for staying. Thank you. I'll pay you later in the bit. And the other thing I just wanted to say before I start is, I'm sorry if I don't give you all enough eye contact, but I feel like I'm on one of those game shows where what was that game show in the 70s where they just kept giving you more and more stuff to hold? And I've got the clicker, I've got my notes, I've got my glasses and my microphone. So what I think I might do, I might put this in my pocket and then see, there you are, that's innovation. Right. Okay, so I was asked to talk about, and we discussed, gendered futures. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, because we all want to get to the bar. But I thought we would start going a little bit back in time to go forward in time, because as we're all futurists here, so that's fine. We all know that you have to go twice as far back into the past if you want to find out what's going to happen in the future. So, hang on a minute. Let's list this.
Know what this is? It's a man.
Of the 15 carload ship, transfer 12A units to Area 3 and 16...
Talking to a machine.
Charges to Area 4.
And this is a machine talking to a machine.
Hello, George. This is Chris over at purchasing. Hi, Chris. What can I do for you? Well, I was wondering, on that order we just received, could we...
You know what this is? A man talking to another man. Man to man, man to machine, machine to machine. In a short time, we've come a long way. This brings you, whether you're a one-man company or a corporation executive, face to face with many challenges. Challenges of change that you may recognize.
Hey, Larry, they want to know where the merchandise is.
Look, I'm sorry. We're trying to get the stuff out as fast as we can, but we're up to our ears in orders.
Yeah. Well, I just came in a minute ago.
Well, I know. I hate to lose your business, but both Jack and I had to be out. We're busy as the devil. Just one of those things.
I don't understand it. We buy some new equipment, change some method, and it's 2 weeks before anybody finds out about it.
What's the matter with you guys back there anyway, huh? I work my pants to the bone trying to make sales, and I can't get the information I want when I need it.
I don't understand.
What's going on?
I don't understand.
I know, but how can I be in when I'm out?
I don't understand. Where the fuck are all the women? So, I mean, that is the major point I wanted to start off with. That is a depiction of the future from AT&T back in 1961. And to give them their credit, I think they did get quite a bit of the future tech right. I mean, in terms of, telco and connectivity and how it's going to affect the future of work. But they sure didn't get the social stuff right. Man and machine, you're a man in the office talking to your other man friends. Well, anyway, I didn't ever want to live in that future. But I think there is a serious point about, when we are thinking about the future, and Richard mentioned sci-fi, of course, and the likes of Robert Heinlein and Asimov, brilliantly futuristic in terms of technology, but actually the people who really got it right were people like Philip K. Dick, who were much more interested in ecology and the environment and communications and media, actually. And they, I think, more accurately predicted a bit, where we are today. Now, the thing about gendered futures I wanted to talk about is not that there aren't female futurists. There are nearly as many female futurists as there are male futurists. It's more that the visions of the future, a bit like that one which we saw back in the 60s, just doesn't really include female visions in the overall narrative about what our probable future is going to be like. And I will just say the words jetpack. It reminds me a little bit of this quote. You've got smart bras and vibrating pants and talking kitchen worktops and augmented reality bedroom mirrors that read the tags on your clothing and tell you what not to wear. And there's no reflection on this at all. It's a very good example because the slide I just forgot to show you asked the question, who decides the future? And at the moment, overall, it's more of a male vision of the future than it is necessarily a more equal male and female vision of the future. And the problem about this, of course, is that, and you've seen it with things like Apple products when they launched the watch, there's a whole bunch of applications that were missing on that would have been very useful for women. But the thing is, when you don't have a female or females vision of the future, then you miss out on the issues that they might think are important. You miss out on a lot of their future needs. So you're kind of missing out half of society. And even now, with the way that we use technology, I would still challenge us and say, it's not a very equal vision of the future. It's not really even a very equal usage of technology today. I wanted to just pick up on this quote, for example. Now, I love this quote, and I use it for lots of things, but this is Yuval Harari talking about the sort of depths of a dataist society and where we might be going. Now, we all know, and I know you talked about voice earlier, we know that virtual digital assistants are going to be incredibly important in the future. But we should think about this vision of the future, which is not just us using them for sort of transactional, functional things, not just asking them to do our shopping and making a few decisions for us, maybe around finances or healthcare. This is literally using that kind of technology to make emotional decisions for us. So outsourcing our emotional decisions. In a data-ist society, I will ask Google to choose. Listen, Google, I will say, both John and Paul are courting me. I love that language. I like both of them, but in a different way, and it's so hard to make my mind up. Given everything you know, what do you advise me to do? Because dating's just data, innit? Well, it isn't. It's a lot more than that. And I think this speaks to something about the way in which we're not really properly envisioning what the future of relationships is, what kinds of relationships we want, not only with technology, but with ourselves and with other people in the future. I'm using a little, did everybody see Blade Runner 2049? Yeah. So you'll know that this is Joy. So this is a holographic sort of avatar that is a virtual or digital assistant. And the key thing here is that you can program her, of course, to have the kind of relationship that you want to have. It's utterly controllable. And for those of you that saw the movie know that she's called Joy for a very good reason. I won't spoil it for everybody. And we might think that this is a little bit fantastical because it's just sci-fi, but it isn't. A couple of years ago, Nesta did a survey, and they found that 26% of 18 to 34-year-olds said they'd happily date a humanoid robot. I know some of you are in this room, I know. And Alexa, we talked a bit about Amazon today and we'll continue to, but Alexa, when she first went, I hate calling her she, but you know, she went on sale, the first year, more than 250,000 marriage proposals. Something's gone horribly, horribly wrong. The important thing here is that we are teaching people to have certain types of, and we are engaging in these certain types of relationships with technology. And it's leading to new, I'd say, mental health. We just talked about suicide and things like that. It's leading to new mental health issues. There's a Japanese term called hikikomori. Does anybody know that? I know you do, Lucia. Hikikomori, that is a term which refers to the retreat into a world of, you know, of your own, really, away from the world of messy, complex human relationships into one that's a bit more machine-orientated, that you can program, that you control, and isn't going to cause you too much heartache. Now, this is there's an increasing trend towards this, not just in Japan, but increasingly across the world. These are the types of relationships we can look forward to in the future. And of course, it's not just relationships with other adults, it's the relationships that's starting to happen very young with children, relationships with kids. So, I'm sure everybody knows that this is Amazon Echo Dot for kids. How did people feel about this when it came out in April? Yeah? Because I thought, okay, and this is designed to go into a kid's bedroom, to tell them stories, to help them interact, to help them learn new language patterns, And there's actually been quite an explosion in the number of speech recognition labs for kids. Because, of course, kids don't speak like humans. They don't say Alexa, they say Oexa. So as a wake word, you know, those sorts of words have to be recognised. And this is a new industry where people are looking at and investigating the speech patterns of children. But kids, what are kids going to be learning from this? They're going to be learning their stories. They're going to be learning how to interact, language patterns. If this piece of equipment, if this machine doesn't need to be pleased or thanked in conversation, then why should we expect a kid to use the words please and thank you when it's demanding things from humans in the real world once it comes out of its bedroom? So these are some of the things I think that we need to start thinking about with our relationships and our interactions in the future. And this is why I wanted to talk to you a bit about gendered futures, because where we've got to is quite a gendered use of technology. We're not thinking about human relationships enough. Do we want to be in a world where, as I've just acknowledged, we are programming technology to interact with us in a certain way? And why is that happening? I just wanted to read out a quote from Emily Empfel at Idea Couture. She said, as a society, we tend to repeatedly hand over power to the same people to envisage the future for us. The Ray Kurzweils, the Elon Musks, the Sergey Brins of the world. They are all cited in countless thought pieces. And the future we read about is made up of recycled interviews curated from the minds of those men. Those men innovating in Silicon Valley. And you were just talking about them, Richard. And this is the point, really. We don't ever stop to think, could the future that we're envisioning be a little bit different if we allowed in a few more visions of the future from women? So what does a future envisioned by a female look like? Everybody know what this is? Yeah? Yeah, so this is Zaha Hadid's building that she concepted and built in Azerbaijan. I mean, just look at it. It's not the Gherkin, is it? It's a long way away from that. And I think it speaks to the sort of understanding of human relationships and relationships between technology and the environment that I was just suggesting tend to be a little bit more female. I'm going to read you a little bit of the description. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit of the description about what this building was built for and why. So it's an auditorium, it's a gallery, and it's a museum. And this centre represents a fluid form which emerges by the folding of the landscape's natural topography and by the wrapping of individual functions around the centre. All functions of the centre, together with entrances, are represented by folds in a continuous surface. This fluid form gives an opportunity to connect the various cultural spaces, while at the same time providing an element of the centre with its own identity and privacy. As it folds inside, the skin erodes away to become an element of the interior landscape of the centre. Now, even that sort of language, it's all about fluidity, it's all about form, it's all about sympathy with the environment. And I think it's very, very female. So, here's the good news. This whole idea around femininity and fluidity is what the future is about. The future is not more female because there's going to be more female futurists. No, it's because feminine values are the emergent values of the future. And it's no coincidence that this is where we are talking about gender fluidity in 2018, because it's all part of the same movement in cultural values, if you like. And we're seeing this whole movement towards moving away from fixed gender and moving towards thinking of it as a concept which is much, much more fluid. I think I'm going to have to put mine on the floor as well. There we go. There we go. So, I just did a big project, actually, for one of the big global brands on the future of gender. And as I was doing it, I was interviewing Greg Rowland, and he gave me this quote, which I think is exactly right. After centuries of gender repression, women have used the non-hierarchical structures of social media to bypass the top-down institutional patriarchy of male power structures. I mean, to just decode that for a second, it is... What happened was when social media came along, it was by its very nature much more matriarchal, right? So it's not hierarchical, it's not institutional, just much flatter and much more about network. And what that meant was that suddenly some voices that had never been heard before were enabled through that kind of media. And obviously, women's voices were some of those voices that are somehow now able to be heard. And so social media, we shouldn't neglect this. Social media was massive in terms of increasing female empowerment, 10, 15 years ago, and bringing it to where it is now. And this whole shift has led to a massive rebalancing of gender. It's not just about the masculine and the feminine, but it's about the continuum between that. It's much more difficult now to really describe something as definitively masculine and definitively feminine. And this is why I used this visual here. Did anybody go to Faye Toogood's exhibition in Selfridges a couple of years ago? No? It's called Agender. And she was there, and she'd got a new collection of clothes. And there weren't male clothes and female clothes. It was just clothes. And that she wanted you to discover what suited you. And so she called it, and when she was doing the posters, he, she, no, it's me. And this is where we're moving to. We're moving to this fluidity. We're moving to this understanding where we can drop some of the demographic descriptors, some of the old descriptors, and actually just be understood and known as me. And why is this important to brands? Well, this is an example of Rain Dove. This is non-binary model. I don't know if anybody knows Rain, but he, she appeared on magazine covers, I would say, 6 months ago, on the newsstands, pretty much side by side in the newsagents. One on the front cover of a magazine looking very feminine, and the other on a magazine front cover looking very masculine. And that's the world we're in now. We're in a world where people can explore their identity and discover that perhaps they have a multi-identity. And when I was doing this piece of research for this global brand, I was talking to lots and lots of owners of brands and organizations and social spaces and all sorts of things. And I spoke to a guy who runs a hybrid kind of hairdressers and bar. And he was saying that they were just about to do their new website. And what they realized when they were doing their website was that the very first question that they asked when people went to the website was, are you male or are you female? And he was saying, we're changing that now, because I just don't even observe gender. It's like, look, there's a person coming in, they have hair, it needs doing, we want to make them happy, and that's it. And so now that they've had their website redone, the first question that they ask you on the website is, do you have long hair or do you have short hair? Which actually, now we look at it now, feels a lot more relevant. And I wanted to say this because I think this is the point, really. We have lots and lots of products and product categories that are actually really interwoven and wound up with the whole idea of gender. There are some really hyperbolic gender performances that go on with categories like whiskey, like beer, like cosmetics, whatever they might be. And we've pursued all that in quite an unthinking way. And now we're having to sort of untangle that and understand people for the individuals they are, and actually sort of think about approaching our marketing very, very differently. That whole idea that Stu was just talking about, people come in, we want to do their hair nice, we want to make them happy, reminded me of this quote actually from Monica Byrne, who's another female futurist in the States. She says, what I see is a bid for control over what the future will look like. And it is a future that actually doesn't look much different from the Asimov science fiction covers. It's not really a future I'm interested in. When I think about the kind of future I want to build, it's very soft and human. And I feel like so much of what I identify as futurism is very glossy and chrome and painted science fiction covers is all very sterile. Who cares about the jetpack? What she's interested in is how does technology enable us to keep loving each other? Now, I suggest that in a very male-dominated or masculine sort of vision of the future, not always, but most of the time, that isn't the question that's all at the forefront. And possibly in a world which is much more equal, where female futures have a voice as well as male futures, we could get to that sort of space. And some of the evidence for this, I think, is clear from what's happening in virtual media. So just to conclude, as I was saying about social media was a technology and a tool that enabled female empowerment. And I do believe that virtual media is going to be the tool and the technology that's really going to give us individual empowerment. So this is, as you all know, I'm sure, Michaela Souza, Lil Michaela. Who follows Lil Michaela on Instagram? Yeah? Yeah. You and 1.5 million other people. So, as you might know, this is Lil Michaela. She's always posting every day, outfit of the day, talking about, you know, what's going on. She's wearing Chanel and Diesel and Supreme and Vans. And she's posting inspirational quotes and sort of giving us a bit of a window into some of her life, particularly her love life. And sometimes it's quite dismal. Sometimes I read it, just, you know, think, oh, it's not just me. But the thing here is, she's completely computer generated. She's not real. And she's got 1.5 million followers. And what's going on here is a bit of a game with us, but it's a game that we get because she's sort of posing the question, like, you know, philosophically, who do we think is real and who do we think is not? I mean, to her millions of followers, I mean, even to me, she's real. I see her at the front rows of fashion shows or whatever. Yeah, I kind of know it's not real, but she's there, so it must be. And Prada definitely thought she was kind of real because they just did a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign with her. And actually, since then, we've seen the likes of Fendi and Balenciaga sending avatar models down the catwalk to showcase real fashion collections. Now, this is the world that we are moving into. And it's interesting to me because I don't know Michaela. She's not real. But I sort of follow all her stories. So maybe she kind of is real after all. And this is the virtual world that is going to help us reinvent ourselves. It's going to help us much more throw off some of those old demographics of he and she and whatever else and actually explore our own identity and actually maybe even try and create different versions of ourselves. So lots of the work that's going on in virtual reality is about avatars. And it's about, you know, creating these spaces where you'll be able to go and meet your avatar friends. Or maybe you'll be able to go and meet other versions of yourself. This has been going on for quite a long time, but it's obviously coming much more into the mainstream now. And so my final point really is that if we look to the past, and maybe even today, yes, we were sort of locked into quite gendered futures. But as I look to the future, I think it's pretty exciting. And I actually think it's much more about ungendered futures. It's about us exploring our own identities and using all the technology and tools that are now going to be available to us to find better and different and more interesting versions of ourselves, to explore the complexity of what it is to be me. Not me. Maybe that is the pinnacle of creativity, actually, to really explore and create one's own identity and send that out into the world to affect other people's life and experiences. Now, you might think that this all sounds incredibly fantastical, but you were talking about Amazon earlier, and one thing that wasn't mentioned was the fact that Amazon, back in 2016, I think it was, bought Body Labs. Now, Body Labs, I think it sounded quite cheap. I think they paid about $100 million for it. But Body Labs allows you to scan in yourself, your own body, and create 3D virtual avatars. Now, why do they want to do that? Of course, so that in the future, you can be shopping around a virtual Amazon retail aisle and buying products in a virtual way. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's probably going to happen at some point. So I started this presentation just with a future vision of the world of work, which I think relied, let's just say, heavily on hyperbolic masculine performances. You saw that, right? But I'm going to leave you with a version of the future, which I think is not a gendered future, is an ungendered future, which invites people in to explore their own unique individualities and their identities, not celebrates their gender, but celebrates their skills. A vision which is really fluid, not fixed, and one I think is all about how we use technology to help enable us to keep loving each other. Thank you.